Welcome back. All right, so some news of the day for all you fine people for your Wednesday after a busy night in the NHL last night. Quieter night tonight. We'll see if it's quieter in the news department. So, Olympic tournament news, the men's tournament, the quarterfinals are now done. The Russians defeating Denmark 3-1. You know, Denmark's gotta hold their heads high, giving the Russians a really good game. Finland beat the Swiss 5-1. Sweden beat Canada 2-0. Not a huge surprise considering the rosters for these teams. I did like the Swedish roster, and they really could end up winning the gold. Slovakia beating the U.S. 3-2. It was a shootout. And yeah, so Slovakia did well in the shootout. The U.S. did not. That sets up your semifinals, which will be the Russians versus Sweden. That could feel like the gold medal game right there, and Finland versus Slovakia. So that's those are going to be a couple of fun games, and of course tonight, starting at 8:10 Pacific time at night and 11:10 at night on the East Coast, the women's gold medal game will be taking place between the U.S. and Canada. So we'll see whether Canada or the U.S. gets the gold. The other, of course, getting the silver. And yeah, it should be fun, but. Not a huge surprise that Canada doesn't medal in this because, again, the Swedish team I thought looked pretty good. When I was watching Sweden against Finland the other night, I only saw like a period, a little bit of. I looked at the names of the players and the roster, and I thought, Sweden's put together a pretty good team, considering the NHL didn't go. But there are some former NHLers on these teams, and yeah, so best of luck to the four countries that are remaining. A fine announced today for Dylan Cousins for a cross-check on Brock Nelson. That way, for Islander fans that may have wanted a suspension, they're not happy. And for people who think that fines in the NHL are ridiculously low, they won't be happy either. So, yeah, that way, nobody's happy. Works out really well. Cousins with the fine. It means if he does it again, it's highly likely that a suspension would follow. Cousins isn't really a dirty player, though, so again, he gets the fine, slap on the wrist. Rest of the season, I would think he keeps his nose clean. The Vegas Golden Knights did come out yesterday after the reports that they were interested in Fleury to deny their interest in Fleury. I'd still keep an eye on them because at the deadline, I do think they need to figure out their goaltending. So if it's not going to be Fleury, they may end up being in on some other goaltender out there that's going to be available, and there are going to be a number of goalies available. It could be kind of a crazy trade deadline that way, but they're saying that Fleury coming back is not in the cards. They're not going to do it, and of course, Fleury's agent basically no. So yeah, that relationship is still at this point broken. But remember, Pittsburgh's a team, too, that might look and go, this Casey DeSmith's been good, but if we brought back Fleury and had him with Jarry, so we'll see what happens there, right? Ottawa. So Matt Murray getting hurt in last night's game against St. Louis. It's too bad. Like, Matt Murray's been playing his best game as a Senator over the last, 6 weeks? He's been playing some of his best games in Ottawa, and, of course, injury comes in. So they have called up Gustafsson as his fill-in, meaning that it could be a while that he's out. We don't know the extent, how long he's going to be out for Ottawa. Hopefully it's not that long, because again, he was playing some of his best hockey, right? And Ottawa's had some good games. St. Louis is an excellent team, so no shame in losing to Ottawa or losing to the Blues. But yeah, so all the best to Gustafsson as well. I think he's a pretty good goaltender, and Forsberg has good numbers this year as well. Patrick Laine, 7-game point streak for him. I'm wearing a Hartnell jersey, of course. But yeah, 7-game point streak for Laine with the assist he had last night in the game against Calgary. So Laine has heated up, and it's one of those things that if you're not paying that much attention to the Columbus Blue Jackets, and they're one of those teams that don't get as much attention as others, you may not be aware that Laine's on a 7-game point streak, so there you go. Philippe Deno, last night for the LA Kings, got his 13th goal, which tied a career high for him. He's had 13 twice. Last season, he had 5 for Montreal. So I'm going to straight out say that LA is very happy to have signed Dano. He has been pretty fantastic for them. He's done pretty well in the shutdown role for them. And so, yeah, his next goal will set a new career high. I think that he's fit in really, really well in LA. And I'd still say that one of the reasons Montreal's had as bad of a season they have is losing Deno hurt him. He was excellent for them in the playoffs last year and a really solid foot soldier for them for years prior. So I'm glad to see he's doing well with the Kings. We shall see how the Pacific settles out because, yeah, the Oilers with that win last night, it kind of makes everything jumbled together. Vegas and Calgary aren't that far ahead of that jumble either. Could be a fun division to watch down the stretch. The Oilers, speaking of the team that beat the Kings last night, they are now 3-0 under Woodcroft, their new coach. There is always that coaching bump that teams seem to get. We saw it in Chicago. We saw it in Vancouver. We've seen it elsewhere too, where you replace the coach. You'll see those first games for the team after a new coach comes in. They're usually pretty good, right? Philadelphia had a bit of a turnaround after they fired Vigneault as well. So for the Oilers, their next couple of games, they're at home against Anaheim first, then they go into Winnipeg. So the game against Anaheim, that's huge for them and for the Ducks because they're fighting over a similar playoff spot, potentially both fighting over third. Then they go to Winnipeg. Winnipeg, a team trying to get back into the hunt desperately, and have given the Oilers a hard time already this year. So that should be a fun one. They remember each other from last year's playoffs too. And then Edmonton's at home against Minnesota. Very good test. And then they go through the Valley of Death. Tampa Bay, Florida, and Carolina are the 3 games that round out the month of February for them. So we shall see with that road trip whether Edmonton fares better than other teams have. It's a rough road trip going through those 3 locations and playing against the Bolts, the Panthers, and the Hurricanes. Yesterday, the Nashville Predators extended Mark Borowiecki. He signs a 1-year contract for $900,000. Borowiecki's been good. I think for $900,000, I think that is a very decent amount of money for him. I think he's worthy of that amount of money. And yeah, I like Borowiecki. He got penalized the other night, and he just sat in the penalty box and went, no. And it wasn't like he was arguing, and it wasn't like he was whining or anything. It was just no. Like I deny this was a penalty. I don't think that. No, it wasn't. All that was missing was him forgiving the referee. And yeah, so Borowiecki signs a contract. He's going to stick around for at least another year for the Nashville Predators, and considering the season that they've had, probably a good idea to keep Borowiecki around. He's been a good depth defenseman, provides some toughness, and one of the many players for Nashville that give that sandpaper. This is a very rough team in Nashville, which could make them a very tough out in the playoffs. They could be a team that even if they get knocked out in the first round, the team that knocks them out might be worn down pretty badly going into the next round. But yeah, so they're definitely going to be an interesting team to keep an eye on, as a lot of them will in the West and in the East. This is we're over halfway through the season. There are so many interesting storylines. I'll be talking about that in a video today. I also, of course, will be talking about Sidney Crosby, who I still call Sid the Kid because he's a heck of a lot younger than I am, so to me, he's still a kid. And so there'll be a video on him getting his 500th goal last night against the Philadelphia Flyers. Interestingly, too, he has 50 goals in his career against the Flyers, so 10% of his goals in the regular season against Philly. He likes playing against Philly. I don't know that Philly likes playing against him that much, although I'm sure they really enjoyed the challenge of playing against Crosby. But yeah, so we'll see that video up later today. And like I said, I've got an interesting idea I want to do on just how competitive everything is right now in the NHL. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.